chapter clicked in to College Volleyball Weekly on Viral Volley Media. Now here's your host, Rob on mic.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to College Volleyball Weekly Men's Top 20. And we've got a really special episode because it's spurned about from starting a new segment 2 weeks ago called Hot Mic Moment with our coaches. And, I entered with caution and it didn't really turn out so great. But in all honesty, for great reasons it did, because it just allowed, I think, the volleyball fans to ask the questions, our coaching staff or our coaching panel to ask those questions as well. One of those involved the MPSF. So with me is the commissioner of the MPSF, the second executive director in the history of the MPSF, with the retirement of Al Baird after, I believe, his 24 years of service in one of the top volleyball conferences in the nation. So, Foti, it is great to finally see you, to not only talk to you, which I've been doing, but I appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Nice to meet you too, Rob, and thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's always a good time. As you know, the volleyball crowd is always a fun and inquisitive crowd. And, with news, and I think it's just because it's growing so fast, there just isn't a whole bunch of coverage. But I thought it'd be a great opportunity to ask you the questions of recent events. But before all of that, I wanted to ask you your history and your journey and what brought you to the MPSF, and particularly your interest in volleyball, as I've been hearing.
Sure. So I've been, this is my 36th year in college athletics. I started a long time ago, all on the administrative side. Got my start at UC Davis, which was my alma mater. I was at Davis back in the good old Division II non-scholarship days. And my first administrative job was at Northwestern. Spent a few years at Northwestern, then moved down to the University of Tulsa and spent 3 years at Tulsa. 5 years after that at Arizona State, and then almost 20 years at Cal Berkeley. So kind of full circle. I'm a Northern California native. Grew up in Santa Cruz, California, and that's actually where I got my first start with volleyball in a way. Growing up in out on the beach, and I'm going to age myself now, Rob. But back in the 80s, used to go in the summertime to an event down on the beach. It was an AVP tour event, the Jose Cuervo.
Yes, you have dated yourself for sure.
Haven't I? So now everybody knows how old I am. But yeah, so I've been a volleyball fan for a long time. At all my stops, again, been fortunate to be a fan and watch high-level collegiate volleyball at all my stops. Was involved again back in the good old Davis days. There was a festival called, it was the Volleyball Festival, which is kind of like the Junior Olympics, and 200 teams. And I worked the volleyball festival a couple times as an undergrad during the summertime, and so kind of always been around volleyball. And again, fortunate when I was at Cal as one of the senior associate athletic directors there. I supervised the volleyball program and was there with Rich Filler and the successful run that Rich had with the women's team. And again, I was along for the ride. Got to watch some high level volleyball. Olympian Carly Lloyd, All-American Tara Murray, Angie Pressey. We 4 straight Final Eights, a couple Final Fours, a championship game. I mean, for a fan like me, that was the epitome of just pinch me, right? Couldn't believe I was with them. And then also with beach volleyball. So under my watch, we started beach volleyball, and I hired Megan as the first coach, first full-time coach. And then fast forward, now I'm in my 4th year as the commissioner of the MPSF, as you mentioned, taking over for Al Beard, who did a fantastic job for many, many years. And until he retired, and I was fortunate enough to get this job and make the transition from being on campus to my first conference job, and again, got lucky and landed in a place with great volleyball. This on the men's side now, so come full circle, as they might say.
So you're not a stranger to high quality volleyball, in which obviously the MPSF is one of the top conferences in the nation to bring men's volleyball to the forefront, to multiple arenas across the nation. But what do you envision as the mission, vision, and purpose of the MPSF for men's volleyball?
Well, I, I'll be honest. I think we're the best volleyball conference in the country. We want to continue to be the best volleyball conference in the country, and we want to continue to grow not only the conference but also grow the game of men's volleyball and do what we can to promote that game. And with everything we do, we have 15 sports now. We've been growing on that side too. We want to provide a great student athlete experience. Some of our high level athletes, including our men's volleyball athletes and alums, have gone on to the Olympic Games and professional careers. We also have athletes where their very last game is going to be at the MPSF Championship. So we want to make sure that we're also providing that great student athlete experience so that they have fond memories from their collegiate days and their athletic days moving forward into their next phase of their career. So we've done some things lately too, where we've been on the forefront of some trying out different rules within the conference. So before they've been adopted with the NCAA, we adopted the 8-second rule for challenges. We adopted the players box. So those things were done, where we kind of gave the NCAA a look into what that might feel like and look like for all of our games before they were adopted. This year we've adopted for our conference the no hands up rule during serves. So we're trying to do some things like bring the rules into the game and forward that as well. And one of the other nice things we did this year, and we're still doing is we're collaborating with other conferences. So Tim O'Brien, Russ York, we've met with them multiple times. Also with Jamie Gordon, we get together, we have our Zoom calls, and we collaborate on what should we be doing to improve the game of men's volleyball from a conference perspective, and how are we working together to promote the game and enhance the game. So I've really enjoyed those relationships and getting to know my fellow commissioners out there in the sport of volleyball.
Well, kind of recent news also was you obviously have a MPSF alum, so to speak, now the president and CEO of USA Volleyball. Have you had any conversations with former UCLA head coach, two-time national champion John Speraw? Oh, and U.S. Olympic team coach. I forgot about that part too.
That's right. I talked to John at the time when he got the job, and obviously we're going to miss him a lot in the conference. He was great for the conference, but he's going to be fantastic for USA Volleyball. So yeah, we will absolutely work with John, and we hope to see him and hope he'll be at our conference championship. But that's a no-brainer. If we don't work with John, we're just fooling ourselves.
Well, let's go to what spurred the conversation and me reaching out to you. And, there were some changes this year that I don't want to say they flew under the radar because, there's a lot of news out there. We got to know where to look to find it, so to speak. But, one of the things that caught my ear and eye was a press conference that Charlie Wade of Hawaii had one of the first 2 matches of the season, and he made reference to the MPSF schedule, and my ear perked. I'm like, what's he talking about? So I did a little research, not research, I just investigation, but there's been a change to the schedule. So I wanted to ask you, what were the reasons why the 2025 schedule in the MPSF is the way that it is, and what was the reasoning and thought process behind it? Because for our listeners and viewers who are new, essentially certain teams only playing each other, and others, the D2s are, I believe, concentrating on that. But I'm hoping, Foti, you can go into more detail into that.
Sure. So as a lot of you know, we added 2 new teams to the conference this year, 2 teams that transitioned from the NAIA to Division II in Menlo and Vanguard, bringing our total conference number of teams from 7 to 9. We spent a lot of time, and when I say we, the collective we, that includes the head coaches. So our staff, we put together at the request of the coaches a number of different types of schedules for the MPSF. And we spent well over 6 months from the end of summer all the way up until late fall before we made a final decision on what our schedule was going to look like for the season. A couple things that came to light. In the past, we've had 12 conference games when it was just 7, and going up to adding 2 more teams, that would bring it to a 16-game schedule if we played the full round robin. And a number of our teams, and I think it's important to to basically have the opportunity to have a strong non-conference schedule. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we wanted our teams to be able to continue with that 12-game schedule because they're used to scheduling against most of the teams in the Big West, right? And we didn't want to cut that out. We'd lose 4 non-conference games if we went to a full round robin schedule. So primarily we wanted it with the MIVA, the EVIA, those conferences, the Penn States and Ohio States, who are common opponents for our teams. And again, the Big West, we wanted to have the flexibility for our teams to schedule. Additionally, we didn't want to lose playing Division II teams. So we do have an unbalanced schedule, as you pointed out. And traditionally with Concordia, every one of our teams would play on average, or play annually, I should say, 2 games against a quote unquote Division II opponent in conference play, meaning Concordia. So we're keeping that. So they all still have between the 3 Division II teams, our Division I's are still playing 2 Division II opponents during the regular season. That kind of stays the same. But lastly, we wanted to make sure, especially for the transition for Menlo and Vanguard, that they also had the opportunity to schedule an appropriate non-conference schedule so that they could be successful too. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody had that fair opportunity to schedule appropriately. And we encouraged all of our Division I teams to schedule the other Division II teams, if they weren't going to play them during the conference, to play them during the non-conference. And a number of our teams have already scheduled or did schedule this year the other Division II teams to play them as a non-conference game. So they are crossing over. They're not all counting. But in the end, it was the decision that was a collective decision made by the coaches in all. I did hear the podcast that you referenced to from a couple weeks ago, and I watched that, and there's a reference to RPI and strength of schedule and strength of conference schedule.
Yep.
That didn't have anything to do with it. And you follow this game enough. And we deal with this in other sports in the MPSF. When you don't have a sport like women's volleyball, where there's over 300 schools that sponsor the sport, RPI doesn't mean much. It really doesn't. You can, if you're smart and you're good at math, you can game the system. You can play none of the top teams, win all your games, and have an incredibly high RPI. But when it comes down to it, when you're only looking at a couple of at-large berths, it's who you play. We've got to play Long Beach, Hawaii, Irvine, Ohio State, Penn State, and anybody else out there that's at the top of their conference now or in previous years, because the NCAA is going to look at common opponents. And when they're going down to, okay, how did you do against Irvine, and how did you do against Long Beach and Hawaii? Somebody's going to get that at large. And again, RPI, yes, RPI factors into it. But when it comes down to it, if you're winning your games and you're winning strong non-conference games and you've got that head-to-head, that goes a long way. And I can tell you that from experience. I've been on NCAA committees. We have staff members who've been on NCAA committees in other sports that that do the selection process. And so we do, when you look at it, it's the eye test, it's how good you are. It's that head-to-head competition against common opponents and other teams that are right there trying to fight for that spot.
Yeah. Well, it seems that especially this year, since the NEC gets that 7th automatic berth, and I think obviously MPSF, Big West, and to a certain degree MIVA teams, we're seeing some pretty intense concern because there's only going to be 2 at-larges. So we all know, as is every year, good teams are going to get left out.
Always. Yeah. And the Big West is having an incredible year right now. And, we've been fortunate the last couple of years to get not only our automatic in for our conference tournament winner, but also been able, at least in my first 3 years, to have an at-large team along with it. So yeah, it's tough competition. I mean, obviously, we're hoping that the 12-team bracket gets adopted soon. I know in concept it's out there, but we're waiting for the finance committee at the NCAA to give final approval. But that'll help everybody.
Is there a timeline for that? Of course, I had to throw that one out there.
I wish I knew. I wish I knew. We all hope it's next year, but it comes down to the NCAA and whether or not they see whether they can afford it. Basically, that's what it's going to come down to, adding those
Right.
extra teams. Yeah,
Hmm. Okay. Um, so the next question that was a common one was what is the purpose and reasoning of adding new D2 teams to the MPSF when the conference has historically been exclusive?
yeah,
And I remember back in, I'll age myself as well, but late 80s, I remember seeing the conference tournament back in the days of the WEVA, and inside the WEVA were two conferences, like sub conferences.
yeah.
But go ahead and address that about the reasoning of adding the two D2 teams, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Sure. The request came in from Menlo and Vanguard as they were transitioning, and they obviously had success at the NAIA level, and they were looking for a home. There is no Division II men's volleyball conference on the West Coast.
Hmm.
We've had actually requests in the past from other schools at the Division III level. UC Santa Cruz has asked in the past too. Um, and we we look at every single case individually. And they go through a pretty sturdy test on whether or not they would fit the conference. And we feel confident that both Menlo and Vanguard would add a lot to the conference. Um, and so we wanted to again feel like we could support them, support college volleyball and its growth as well.
Hmm.
Like leaving them out there as independents um, doesn't do much for anybody. We wanted to give them an opportunity to come in and grow with the conference. And going back really quick to the question about the schedule, I do want to say that everything is reviewed at the end of the year, and just because we do something one way 1 year, doesn't necessarily
Hmm.
mean we don't change. I mean, we're gonna do a full scale evaluation at the end of this year and determine if this schedule was the right thing to do. And if our coaches change their mind and want to do the full round robin, we will. If we want to do something different, we can do that as well. But yeah, but again, for Menlo and for Vanguard, it was really the right thing to do to bring them in and to support them and help with again the growth. We enjoy the growth of volleyball. I know it's been, especially at the D2 level, is growing
Hmm.
fast. So yeah, so that was one of the main reasons, or really the reason.
Right. Now, um, I know that this question was kind of a tag on to the previous question I'd asked you, but
Yeah.
there are people out there that think that the move to add the D2 teams was to be a cushion in the event that the Big Ten teams broke off and formed their own conference, like Penn
Yeah.
State, Ohio State, UCLA, USC, and then whoever others that developed a conference. Is that the case, or is that something that's not to be answered at the moment?
Well, I can answer it. It was never a consideration. The Big Ten is not a worry for us, quite honestly. It was more about again supporting two teams that needed a home, and really we felt like they could add to the conference. Um, they're going to be competitive, and they're going to get competitive fast. And I know that we're not. This is maybe for a topic for another day, but with the House settlement looming and roster limits coming, Division IIs are going to benefit when Division Is have to cut roster spots. Where are those kids going to go play?
Hmm.
So the schools that are not opting in are gonna benefit because they can have larger rosters. But going back to your question, the Big Ten was not never a concern. It's not a concern right now. Um, they have four schools. You need six in order to start the conference, for a conference to start a sport. The Big Ten has not traditionally been a conference that takes affiliate teams. So,
Hmm.
so again, unless two Big Ten teams are going to start men's volleyball, I don't see that as an issue right now. If that happens, that's good for volleyball because we got two other Division I schools adding volleyball. That's great. And that's the way the MPSF has been in the past. We've had sports that we've started, been there as they emerged, and when they grew, they left and went to their parent conference. So, again, that's part of why we're here is to make sure everybody has a home.
Right. Now, one of the things that have come up in my conversations just in the last like 24 to 48 hours was there's chatter of some teams that were going to be starting up again and potentially considering going to the MPSF. I know it's chatter, but the teams that came to the discussion were Pacific, UC Merced, and I'm leaving another one out, but it's not coming to me. But uh, is there opportunity available in the MPSF for teams to come in if they decided to, like that traditionally had programs before?
Yeah, absolutely. Merced is playing this year, and we're watching Merced.
Hmm.
Jessup is another one. Um, Jessup inquired about joining us this year. They just started their program, as you know,
Hmm.
and they may have jumped the gun a little bit with the press release about joining the conference.
I
Um,
was wondering about that.
but we're watching them, and our teams are playing them, and that's good real life kind of uh, doing some research on them, and we're going to watch them as they grow. They're um, if there's a time and place for them to be added, certainly. Pacific, boy, when's the last time we had a Division I school start a program? We would love to have Pacific join the MPSF. So we're keeping our eyes on. I've heard news about that as well. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hope that's true and they start a program.
Yeah, I remember being there for their last match ever at the Bren Center as a men's program years and years ago. Sad night. It was a very, they won, I believe, and it was so saddening to see a program just go off into the sunset, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, I would love to see them come back, and especially for the Division One, to have another Division One team added. And again, we would love to invite them if they start the program.
Right. Well, the another hanger question on the previous two is
Sure.
because of the number of D2 teams, someone said, well, maybe they're just going to form a D2 conference and the winner of that gets an auto berth, and then the D1 teams will get that auto berth, or maybe there'll be a crossover tournament for auto berths for the MPSF. But has there been any kind of discussion in regards to something like that, or is it still tweaking and figuring out?
I would say with only three Division Two teams, that's not realistic. I think that we've all heard that Division Two is thinking about asking the NCAA for their own championship. I think we're
Mhm.
years away from that. And again, the Division Two growth, there's been a lot of it. If the time comes where the NCAA actually starts Division Two to men's volleyball as a separate standalone sport and has their own championship, then yeah, I think it makes sense for a conference like us that can take a number of schools um, and build out a Division Two separate uh, division to the MPSF, and then have an automatic into the Division Two championship and an automatic qualifier into the Division One. Fantastic. But until then, we're not planning on having divisions of Division One and Division Two. Again, with 9 schools and only 3 of them being Division Two, we'll keep them together. Our postseason tournament will be we had to get creative in how we're going to seed that tournament,
Mhm.
and because obviously you have an unbalanced schedule, and so we've basically put together a couple things. At the end of the year, each of the coaches are going to be able to rank 1 through 8, so they can't vote for themselves, but they'll rank 1 through 8 um,
Mhm.
how they want to seed the tournament, and the school essentially with the fewest votes will be ultimately the 1 seed, and the team that earns the most votes will be the 8 seed. But we're not going to go strictly by the coaches' vote. We're also going to have a committee that includes 3 coaches. It will include the current hosts coach. So this year be
Mhm.
at Pepperdine. So Jonathan Winder, um,
Mhm.
Jeff Nygaard as the previous host, and
Mhm.
and then Chris Seifert, who's going to be the Division Two representative. So we're always going to have 3 coaches plus myself and our associate commissioner Steve Robertello for championships. So Steve, myself, and the 3 coaches will make up a kind of a pseudo NCAA committee, and we're going to look at how'd you guys do in the conference? How which Division Twos beat Division Ones, because Concordia has had a Division One win almost every year in our conference, if not more. Um, you know, how where again, where'd you kind of finish? Where'd you finish in the rankings? And put it all together, and that's how we're going to seed our tournament this year.
So with the, I guess you'll call it an MPSF tournament committee,
Yeah.
will they be looking at analytics and all that as well, or is it still is it going to be a, a procedure kind of like when the NCAAs or other tournaments they have look at point ratios and so forth, or is that going to be out the window and go to discussion of the committee?
I think the committee, especially with representation from at least having a Division II coach being a representative,
Mhm.
I think the three of them, we're going to kind of lean on them uh, to do their best in terms of, let's be realistic about uh, who is the best team out there. I mean, I think part of it we're going to see as the season plays out. Do we have an undefeated team? Are they clearly the number one? Then yeah, they're probably the number one team. Um, look again at who's beaten whom, and where that kind of falls in place. I think we're kind of figuring it out as we go too. I don't know how much analytics are going to play a role in it this first year. I mean, we're not going to use our own version of an RPI or anything like that. We have a set of tiebreakers that are in our bylaws so that if we want to use those tiebreakers, which do get into a little bit more analytics with sets won and points and things like that. If we have to get down to the nitty gritty, we will. I feel confident that based on the coach's rank and based on the coaches doing the eye test as well, we'll come to a pretty easy conclusion on how we see the teams. The coaches were clear, and I have to give credit to our Division I coaches because
Hmm.
they were clear in that the Division twos are just not going to be the bottom three seeds. That's not the way it's going to work. We have to play this season out, and yes, we're not playing each other evenly
Hmm.
in a full round robin. But you talk to John Costa, he got his first win at Concordia last year in 5 years. So we got to play the games. We got to play the games and let it be decided on the court, and then we'll see how we go from there.
Right. Well, all great information for sure. I feel like I've just barraged you with the conference structure, so I'm going to go away from that now.
No worries. No
And
worries.
one of the other top topics that's come up was um, how did the Big Ten deal come into play for 2025 in regards to being I guess, the mega conference of the MPSF and then the media deals that went along with it and streaming?
Yeah, so the Big Ten Network is our partner for streaming and for broadcasting our men's volleyball games and our beach volleyball games.
Hmm.
So we partner with a company called CSMG, Collegiate Sports Management Group. They're out of New York. They own and manage our multimedia rights. They work with 22 different conferences from around the country. If you've heard of Learfield,
Hmm.
very similar to Learfield in terms of working with um, conferences, individual colleges, and all their multimedia rights. So that's who our partner is. This year we were able, primarily once the Pac-12 media deal ended, whether they stayed together or not didn't matter. But moving forward, we were going to be able to, for the first time, the MPSF was going to be able to have our own media deal for regular season competition. We've always owned our own rights for the championships, but we've never been able to have sell the media rights for regular season, like for water polo, for example, or gymnastics, and
Hmm.
volleyball now. So we went out to solicit bids. We ended up with 4 finalists that were interested in bidding for this was both a package deal, men's volleyball and beach volleyball. Uh,
Hmm.
in the end, the Big Ten Network won those rights. Um, it had absolutely nothing to do with USC and UCLA, or on the beach side with Washington, Oregon, along with UCLA and USC. It was not a Big Ten decision. It was the fact that the Big Ten came in with the best deal. We're getting linear television. So we're going to be on, not only are we on the Big Ten Plus, so every one of our games will be on and is currently on the Big Ten Plus. So live,
Hmm.
every game is live.
Yep.
But we got a minimum of 6 games on the network on live television. Um, so that's huge. And I'm going to actually do a comparison here because I know people are asking about ESPN and ESPN Plus. And why didn't we go to ESPN Plus? We could have gone to ESPN Plus. ESPN Plus doesn't pay. We're getting a really good deal from the Big Ten. They were interested. Obviously, they have some interest in UCLA and USC and Washington and Oregon. They have an interest in their schools, but they're paying us for these rights. So I'll do a comparison with the Big West. The Big West has an ESPN deal. It's a basketball deal. As part of their deal and getting paid for basketball, for Big West basketball, each school has to show a number of games on ESPN Plus. I think the number is 60 per school. And each school can choose how they're going to do those 60 broadcasts, not including basketball. The schools have to produce it at their own cost.
Right.
And they're not getting paid.
Wow.
They're not on the ESPN network. They're on the ESPN Plus. Our 6 games are, again, we have, like I said, a minimum of 6 live televised games. Again, by comparison, Big West basketball, they're getting 5 of their basketball games on the network. 5. And then they also get their semifinals and their final of their tournament. Our tournament championship in both in volleyball will be on live television in addition. Our beach volleyball championship, and I think also all the games on Friday will be live on the network. So
wow,
that exposure is huge. Not only huge for the MPSF, but huge, especially for volleyball, to actually be on live linear television on the network.
Yeah.
So and that was really the deciding factor compared to the other 3 finalists who were great companies, and we've worked with both of 2 of them, and we, you know, again, just the opportunity to be on live television was huge. So that really was the differentiating factor.
Yeah.
So and then another cool thing is part of it, part of the deal, and this has to do with beach volleyball, is that Volleyball World is now a partner, and we have 2 big tournaments. We have the Mid-Season Rumble at Stanford, where all our teams participate in that tournament, and then of course our MPSF Championship at the end of the year. Volleyball World will also be producing a simulcast alongside the Big Ten Network, and it will be and they'll be able to simulcast those games to their international crowd. So again, I feel like what we're doing is a big deal for the sport of volleyball, and yeah, it's another streaming service. You have to pay for ESPN Plus. That's not free. You have to pay for the Big Ten Plus. Obviously, that's not free. But the opportunity and the exposure, it just, you know, and the fact that we're getting paid as a conference for these rights is a big deal for us.
And that's a
for the
time,
team. And
right?
for first time. I
For
don't
the
know.
conference.
I don't know. I mean, other conferences have deals. They all have the ESPN Plus is easy because, again, they'll take any content possible, but again, they're not going to pay for it. They're just, and you have to produce it and do it yourself. And for us, our financial model is the money is going back to help these schools and these teams. And in an age where finances and budgets are getting tighter and tighter, anything that we can do between corporate sponsorships, ball deals, like we have with Molten, which we're getting free equipment, and I know other conferences have that too, but and a television deal where we can put and infuse money and offset the expenses of our schools. That's good for us. That's good for them. That's a way to keep those programs going, and that's helping volleyball.
Yeah. One of the things that I didn't hear you mention that is one of the big news makers within the last 3 or 4 months is the amount of growth of viewership of women's volleyball, particularly and more specifically in the Big Ten network, because of how much it has grown. There have been so many viewers and so many people have been encapsulated by that play. And I feel like there's a great momentum for men to piggyback on, which would be a great benefit for the conference. But that's me as a hardcore volleyball fan. I'm always optimistic.
Well, but again, it's a win-win, right? Why not tap into that fan base that's only been able to watch women's volleyball on the Big Ten Network, right? And so they've done a fantastic job. I mean, gosh, and talking with the leadership at the Big Ten Network, Michael Calderon has been our main contact with the vice president, and I can't thank them enough. And they really want to grow the sport of men's volleyball and beach volleyball to where they have women's volleyball. And so they're jumping in with us just as much as we're jumping in with them. And this is a true partnership. And we're excited about that. And again, why not? If you're a volleyball fan and you've been having a great time watching the women play and you turn on the Big Ten Network and all of a sudden you're seeing a game on their network or on the Plus, we're gonna get a whole bunch of new fans that have never seen that game, and a different style of game, obviously too, but an exciting one nonetheless. So
Yeah.
we're excited about that, and one other thing I'd like to actually bring up as well that we just started with the conference, which I think is pretty exciting, is a program that we partner with Syracuse University, and it's their Newhouse School of Communication. And if you're a sports fan like I am, and a lot of people are out there, and Syracuse University, anybody out there who graduated from this program, from Bob Costas on down, and half of probably the ESPN talent and Big Ten Network talent are sports broadcasters from this program. And so we partnered with them, and we're in the process right now of building out our MPSF network on YouTube, and we've got these students doing interviews with our coaches and putting together programming. And again, thanking the Big Ten, they have something called Big Ten U, which they work with a lot of their conference schools in providing undergraduates these opportunities. They're partnering with us as well in this, and going to be taking some of the content and putting it on the Plus. So, it's a great partnership all around.
Well, that was one of my final questions for you. Is like, after viewing what the Big Ten has done with social media for the women's in the fall, that's phenomenal pieces out there. Social media, from little hit pieces or not hit pieces, but athlete pieces, coaches pieces. Those same resources sound like they're going to be available to MPSF teams and staff. Is that correct?
They are, absolutely. So, yeah, like I said, it's been nothing but positive, and we're really excited that we're with them for these two sports.
Well, that's excellent information, Foti. I so appreciate you just laying it all out there for all our listeners and viewers who follow the men's game. And there's some diehards that are like, well, why is this happening? So I really appreciate you being transparent with what's been going on in the MPSF, because a lot of us are searching for information, just wanting to get the right information and see what's happening.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm happy to share. There's no reason why we shouldn't. We're all big volleyball fans, and we want to do what's best for the sport and do what we can to promote it and provide exposure and put a great product on the floor, and hopefully win another championship. We'd love to do that too.
Oh, that'd be 3 in a row for the MPSF. It's going to be a pretty crazy accomplishment.
It would be. It would be. I don't know when the last time that's happened. I know we've got 18, which is more than any other conference, so we'd love to keep adding to that number.
All right, this is Foti Mellis, the commissioner of the MPSF, or the executive director of the MPSF. Thank you for your time tonight. I look forward to actually seeing you in person at one point, which I know that I will be in the next few months for sure.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, and love being on.
Thanks for listening to College Volleyball Weekly. Be sure to follow Rob Aspero at the Rob on the Mic on Instagram and at Rob on the Mic on Twitter.